Welcome everybody to another episode, another very special episode of the MoCo Show. This is part 3 of our Boundary Special, and here is your host, Alex Tsironis.
Thank you so much, Gavin. We are here for part 3 of our MCPS Boundary Analysis Special. We're joined by Nurit, our real estate expert.
Hello.
And we're joined by Stephen Austin, the creator of the Montgomery County MD Neighbors for Local Schools, the Facebook page that now has over 7,000 members.
How you doing?
Glad to join.
Awesome having you. And let's just jump right into it. You started this Facebook page on November 4th.
Correct. Yep.
And in just over 2 months, it's grown to over 7,000 people.
Yes.
Did you expect that to happen?
Absolutely not. I started the group with the hopes that I could actually maybe build a presence by the November election, thinking that this would become more important as we get closer to that date, and was completely blown away. There was a week in December where we added 2,000 members, and it just completely caught me by surprise, but we kind of got it stabilized and got a good base going, and it's still growing.
Was there one specific thing that kind of that jump started it? You know, you had like 50 or 60 and then this one thing happened and it just kind of blew up, or was it a little bit at a time?
The first week, I think we had about 100 people. I was doing all the content. I was able to keep up with every reply. It was pretty easy to moderate, and then for some reason, something took off, and about 2 or 3 weeks later, we were, 2,000-3,000 people, and I was just amazed. So,
would you say so? One of the topics that came up last week, I believe Jill brought it up, that people were removed from the page. How many people would you say have been removed, and what's the reason someone would be removed?
There's a lot of reasons. I think the latest count is probably close to 20.
Okay.
That were removed or blocked, and it's either that they continue to post off topic, and we have a set of rules that we kind of use to point people towards, or they do something with advertisements, or they start talking about topics that we just don't feel like need to be discussed in great detail. But we do leave people on that have an opposite view of what the majority of the group tends to express, and we do encourage people to have conversations.
So what's the ultimate goal of this group? So now you have 7,000 people. You didn't expect it. 2.5 months in, we're at 7,000. Do you have like a goal in terms of numbers? Do you have a goal in terms of what you expect this group to do?
Yeah, I would love, my target in the back of my mind is 50,000 people. We have started a 501c4, and it has the same name. We're about to launch the website. It is MC4LS, so Montgomery County, the number 4, localschools.com. And the purpose of that website is to get away from the Facebook page and give people the information that I think they need to really understand this topic and really frame it for them. And I've previewed all the material that's going to go on there, and it's fantastic. I think it's really going to be a great place for someone to start to educate themselves on this, because probably the problem is when you get on the Facebook page, you're overwhelmed. And ultimately, to answer your question about the goals, I think we really want to have an influence on the board. We want to have a voice for the parents and the concerned citizens, and that's really it. I mean, we don't feel like they were really listening to the community before, and now the community wants to be heard, really.
So Nurit, you've been a part of this Facebook page since pretty much the start, right?
Right. Maybe they had 2,000 people when I got in.
Okay, and what are your thoughts on the page so far? I know you're a fan, so that's
Yes,
why I asked.
I love it. So there's a lot of information, a lot of data is being shared. It's putting everybody on their toes in terms of making sure we know what's going on, what the thoughts, what things that the Board of Education said or didn't say, what happened in other counties or up north in Clarksburg. I've learned so much, and this is a lot of data is going out there, and people misinformation, people don't know. But here in this Facebook page, I get real concrete data, proofs of data information. A lot of people comment, and other people bring information. It's great. I love it.
Stephen, what have you? And this is kind of like on the lighter side. What's something that has been brought up just over and over, and you're kind of like, oh, another one about this. Is there something that
there's a Daily Caller article that gets removed every time it gets posted, because Daily Caller tends to be right-leaning, and we do stay away from partisan discussions. Now, it has been posted once, and we left it once because it does deal with the topic, and we try to let all the voices be heard. But a lot of people that are new to the site, they go and post it, we remove it, they get mad, and it happens. But
So I'm assuming you have been met with some opposition, right? I mean, it hasn't just been all great, right?
for sure.
Has there what's been the biggest challenge for you, kind of heading this this Facebook page and this group, and kind of being an advocate for really, I hate saying your side of things, but
Yeah.
it is a side, so what's been the biggest challenge for you?
Well, I think part of it is the misinformation that gets out there, and there's a lot of characterizations of our group that I don't think are fair, or maybe the people that are making the characterizations just aren't part of the group, so they don't really know what we stand for. A lot of times people say we're anti-diversity. That couldn't be further from the truth. A lot of times people say, oh, we just want to completely stop the boundary analysis. We don't want any changes. That's not true either. I think parents realize that schools change, populations change, and we need to adjust accordingly. But we need to do it in a way that's logical and transparent, and that the community feels comfortable with and feels like they're being heard.
So I remember the first time I saw the Facebook page existed was one of the members who I'm friends with on Facebook posted about it, and her fear at the time, which I'm sure has kind of been quelled, was that her kids would be moved from the North Potomac area and bused to Silver Spring.
Right.
That's not a reality, right? That's not.
From every indication we've heard from the board, you're right. It's not going to be the reality.
But there is a reality that you have heard or are kind of advocating against, and what's that? What is it that, in terms of busing? Because we hear busing, and a lot of people do assume from one side of the county to the other. That's not the case. But what is the case? And you say local schools, so what exactly does that mean?
Well, the way that the board has explained it, and they've been somewhat consistent on this, is they're only looking at adjacencies. But if you look at a cluster map of Montgomery County, and you guys all know how traffic is around here, I mean, if you're moving from one side of a cluster to another cluster, that could still be a 30, 45-minute bus ride, no problem. So I think that when we say local schools, we're talking about the community that surrounds the school, the community that supports the school, and in many cases, like, I can only speak to my own experience. My daughter, I can drive her to school in the morning. It's great. It takes us about 10 or 15 minutes. I get to have a conversation with her every day. If she had to get on a bus to some even adjacent cluster, I wouldn't be able to do that anymore because I would be late for work, and it creates a lot of problems, and that would be okay if it solved a lot of problems too, but we're not sure that that's the case.
But also, isn't it that, I think what grabbed my attention was what happened in Clarksburg. So they actually did that and moved kids, from one cluster to the other, from Clarksburg to Germantown. Maybe Steve, you want to, you know more than I do on that one, but I think that's really where you see that the Board of Education may say they're not going to move the kids or bus them, but it did happen, and it just have happened.
So did the group come up because of what happened in Clarksburg, because of what may happen in the Walter Johnson area, or was it a combination of both?
Well, when I started the group, I was paying close attention to what was happening in Howard County, and in particular, I thought there was a lot of opposition. I had seen numbers like 100-1 opposition to the plan that the superintendent came out with, and I thought for sure this is not going to pass in any form that was proposed. It went from 7,400 students that were impacted to 5,400, and I personally was shocked. And then I knew what was happening, that they were looking at the boundaries in Clarksburg, and I said, you know what, I would like to find the Montgomery County version of this same, there's a group in Howard County, and I started looking for it, and it didn't exist. So I just created it, stuck a dopey looking bus on there, and then just it's grown from there. But yeah, I think that the key to getting people in this thing as fast as they were is a lot of other parents had that same experience that I did. And I think it's what gets people over the hump when they say, oh, well, I got this email from Montgomery County Board and it said nothing's going to happen. And you say, well, look at what happened in Clarksburg. Something did happen there.
Something did happen, and not many people knew it was happening.
Right.
It kind of. I don't want to say snuck under the radar, but that's kind of what happened. It came out of nowhere, and the issues came up after, when people were like, wait a minute, I'm impacted by this.
Right.
They didn't know it was happening. And I believe, Nurit, you've mentioned in the past that the folks over in Clarksburg kind of, I don't know if they voted against it or they selected an option that was different. I believe you had
Right,
said so.
so I saw that 82% of the surveyors selected different option, and the Board of Education picked the least favorable option. And I believe there's a lawsuit right now, or some kind of
There's an appeal.
An appeal,
and
right?
there's also a lawsuit. So there's two cases. The appeal, I was told I could announce this. It has actually advanced. They appealed to the State Board of Education, and then it has advanced in the last, I think, 3 or 4 days, and it's going to an administrative hearing. The Board of Education has until February 7th to reply to this thing, and if you notice on the site, we've been raising money again, and we're up probably around $30,000, but we're trying to raise more because this could go beyond this hearing to another higher court eventually.
Right. So, Steve, I think for a lot of my clients, are not familiar with this situation or what happened. What is the problem really? Can you give like a 2-minute kind of, what is the school boundaries analysis? What the story is? What are we worried about?
So, in general, the changes that allowed Clarksburg to go the way it went involved a change to a facilities policy, which is called Policy FAA. It has 4 metrics that are used for anything that involves a facility. It's proximity to the school, it's capacity, it's stability of assignment, and it's diversity. What they changed was they elevated diversity to the highest consideration.
They is the Board of Education.
Board of Education.
Mm-hmm.
And then when this got applied to Clarksburg, there was a high school that Seneca Valley, which had expanded capacity. So in any case, they needed to redraw the boundaries so that they could populate that extra capacity. But then they applied it to the middle schools as well, and they applied it under the new policy. And I think that's what caught people off guard, because Rocky Hill Middle School and Neilsville Middle School got kids swapped just for diversity. And now you've got kids that are on the bus 30, maybe even 45 minutes that were much closer to their school before. And that's the crux of the appeal. There's a lot of detail I won't get into.
So one of the anger is that A, they changed the FAA and it wasn't noticed, and B,
11 days.
11 days, right? And B, that it's not, geographic location is not weighted the same as
Right.
diversity. Diversity is more
Yeah.
important, the geographic proximity. That's the
Mhm.
biggest problem, and a lot of parents are worried that this is going to happen again right here in this Montgomery County. Complete
Once
boundary
the boundary
analysis.
study is finished.
Okay.
Correct. Mhm.
Sorry.
Hi, so Stephen, you have 7,000 or 7.1 thousand people in your group right now. I'd say behind you. I would assume if they're in the group, most are behind you. In agreeing with what you have to say, the goal is to get it to 50,000 at least by election time. Do you have any specific goals in terms of rumors have been swirling. Are you going to run? Is that something you're considering?
I am. I have an appointment as of right now to file with the election committee, and I've got the paperwork filled out. So I will be filing. Do plan to run. I think I've been encouraged by a number of our members, and it seems like the right thing to do.
Well, that's breaking news here
Yes.
in our boundary
That's-
analysis episode.
Surely is.
It's something that people have asked, and have people asked publicly on the page.
There's been some questions and suggestions, but this is the first time I've announced this publicly. So
Oh well, we thank you for doing it right here. Do you think this group are? I guess will you use the group to kind of, I don't want to say help yourself, but to kind of help your campaign?
it's a good question.
It is your group, so
Right. So you're touching on a lot of interesting questions, and basically the bottom line is, I want to be as transparent as I'm asking the board to be, and so I want to not give the appearance that I'm using this unduly. I want the group to pick who they want for their representative, and if that happens to be me, then I think they'll be behind me to use the group to our advantage, because it would be it would be tying our arms behind our backs if we didn't use it, but I want to make sure that everyone is comfortable with who our candidate is. There's a number of other candidates that have run with similar positions to mine, and so I want to be fair about that process, and that's kind of my goal there.
Oh, that's I mean, that's understandable. You know, I obviously have a Facebook page. Initially, when I created the MoCo Show Facebook page, I was trying to figure out, do I make this a page or a group?
Right.
And the reason I went with the page was because, you know, you probably encountered this early on. If it was a group, you kind of lose. You gotta be on top of that thing every second of every day. Even right now, as a page, the comments, you know, people are sending me messages. They're like, "You need to delete this comment." I'm like, "Look, I get 60,000 notifications
So
a day.
hard. So
I
hard.
can't see every comment."
Yeah.
So there's a lot to kind of keep up with.
Yeah.
And then there's, you know, I've seen, and I don't want to say like it's a little going back and forth, but I've seen you all go back and forth a little bit. Dan Reed is he's a friend of mine.
Yeah.
And I've seen you all go back and forth. Can you kind of touch on that? Like, what's that been about? What?
Yeah, well, I've only met Dan Reed once in person, and that was at one of the committee community hearings that we had for the WXY process. WXY is the group that's conducting the boundary study. Look, Dan he's got his own agenda. Everyone's got an agenda. He's an urbanist, from what I understand. He's coming at this from a different angle, and I don't begrudge the guy that, because everyone's got their own issues, and they have their own beliefs, and we're all big kids, and this is social media. I will say that I've taken issue with a couple of his tweets, but I'm sure there's things that I've put out that he takes issue with as well, and we had a totally cordial conversation at the table, and
I think that's what's important, because
Yeah.
you're gonna encounter people from every
Sure.
single side of this thing, and when you do meet, it can go one of two ways, I guess. And
Yeah.
and luckily, thankfully, everything I've heard recently has been, you know, people are very cordial with each other, and it's
Yeah.
almost like, you know, when you're talking to someone on social media and replying to a tweet and tweeting yourself, you're trying to get likes. You know, that's kind of the
Right.
Yeah, you're trying to call someone out sometimes, but we answer differently when we're looking at that person and we're
Sure.
talking to them face
Yeah.
to face, because you see, well, they're a person too. You know, they're not just, and this is me and that person, you know, face to face. I'm not getting any likes here. It's you know, it's me and that person, and that's why I think we need to have a lot more of these in-person conversations, because
sure.
then you see, oh, that's a person. That's not this name on the internet that's just, you know, not agreeing with what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm glad to hear that, because all I've seen was, you know, a little bit, nothing major, you know, just,
Yeah,
hey, this
yeah.
is what this person said about me, and it hasn't been just you. I've seen it a lot
Right.
with a lot of people, you
Yeah.
know, screenshotting people and
Right.
taking people's you know, quotes and taking it one way or another. But I wanted to kind of segue into something, and we got Nurit here, who's our expert, our real estate expert. Property values. It's something that I saw a lot more early on in the group
Right.
chat about, and I asked a question in the group. I think it's the only question. Well, I might have talked about this, you know, podcast as well one time, but the question I asked was about property values, and I remember the first response was a gentleman who said, "Be careful, you know, he might be a spy from the other group." And I was like, what? You know, I was like, I'm not a spy. First off, because I asked the same question in two different groups, because I wanted to see every
Yeah.
perspective. But do you think that this is something, and we'll have Nurit chime in just a second,
Sure.
but do you think this is something that can affect property values?
I think from the data that we've seen in other examples of similar studies and similar changes to kind of school populations, it can happen. What that drop would be, I have no idea. But one thing I'll say about property values is that the way I think about it, and I've talked to a lot of people about this, property values, concerns about property values, that's just one symptom of the bigger issue here. The bigger issue is, you know, people spend their entire adult lives making life decisions and planning for their future. I mean, I did that with my kids. I think everyone does that with their kids. And I think when you have this fear and uncertainty about what may happen to your kid, it manifests itself in all kinds of ways. And property value is just one of them.
Yeah.
And so I tend to not really dwell on it as much, because I think you got to attack the core of the issue.
Yeah, I mean, for me, someone that I don't have kids yet, but I do have a home, you know,
Right.
and so I value a little more than
Right.
others might. But I've also, you know, people have said have have made fun of the fact that I put an emphasis on property value. Some people have told me there won't be any change. Some people have said there will be a huge change. And Nurit, what's your thought on that? From a real estate perspective.
So, well, I can talk about it for a long time, but I'll tell you. First of all, I don't think I had a client. I had many clients. Most of the clients will plan for the future, whether they have kids or not, and always ask me about school district. Always do a research about school. So yes, school is very much important. And I give you a simple example. Just a week ago, I went with clients to Bethesda. We're looking about at a house for $1.35 million in Bethesda. And we're standing there in the kitchen thinking about, should we put an offer, should we not? And then she looks at me and says, Nurit, I really like this area because of the school district, but I heard all these things about the boundary. Are they going to change the boundary? And then she said, because if they will, I'm not going to buy right now. And then she said, you know what, the heck, maybe I'll just wait and not buy anything right now and see what's going to happen with the boundary. So I was kind of stunned, and her husband looked at us and says, you know what, the heck with it, let's buy in Virginia. Literally, that's what they said. I was amazed by that, but I'll tell you that, yes, I haven't seen any place where there's a fear about schools that it doesn't affect real estate. It's in hand for sure. And it also may affect the county budget, the county financing, because if really people fear, and this creates a lot of emotions, I think it's going to affect real estate in general. We have to be worried about. I mean, the Board of Education has effect not only on the schools and the kids, which is the most important for us is our kids, but also about the economy of the county. So this can blow up in dimensions that we didn't even think about, and we really have to be careful and make sure the data comes out the right way, and we don't induce some fear or wrong fear, and people are not confused, and the Board of Education are very, very clear about what they're trying to do or not. That's the biggest issue for me.
That's understandable. You hear people always threatening to leave for different reasons. Hey, if this person gets elected, I'm out. I'm moving to so and so.
Yes.
But in this case, someone is literally saying they're leaving or not choosing Montgomery County because of a specific
and
situation.
We actually end up not putting an offer on this house. They are standing on the fence waiting.
Gotcha. And so I wanted to touch on one last thing before we wrap up. We only have a couple minutes left here, but there's a lawsuit. It's coming up, and can you just kind of give us a brief overview of that lawsuit? What's it about? What's gone into it? And...
Yeah, sure. It's. I mean, I got it underlined right here because I'm not good at memorizing this kind of stuff, legalese. But it says the changes that took place, and in particular, they're talking about what I said about the middle schools, Neilsville and Rocky Hill Middle School. And it says it does not significantly change any capacity in the affected schools, contrary to the only authority afforded the MCBOE under policy FAA, and effectively does nothing more than adjust the percentages of race in the schools that are already racially diverse. So they're basically trying to say that this is unconstitutional, the way that they're applying this. And I've heard some good news. There's been some discovery in this case, and I don't have any details on it right now, but the plaintiffs I am in touch with on occasion, and they seem to be pretty encouraged by the movement that's happened recently. So,
all right. Well, thank you for that. We are out of time, or we got to wrap up. But I wish you the best of luck in your campaign. Assuming you go through with it tomorrow during your appointment. But thank you so much for joining us, and Nurit, thank you as well.
Thank you for having me.
So Stephen, good luck, and once again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Alex.
All right, boundaries number 3.
Great.
Good questions too.
Well, you all did.